Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue with this week's theme of short songs, looking at tracks that are less than 3 minutes and 30 seconds, specifically looking at 2 tracks under that time limit from a single artist. Today we're going to be looking at the group Pig Destroyer. Now, I've heard a couple of artists with pig in their title, and I can't remember if I've heard this one. The album art on this is wild. We're going to be looking at something off of the Prowler in the Yard album called Hyperviolet. After this, though, we'll be checking out the track Pretty In Casts, which is, yeah. I did say yesterday, though, that I thought we had found the shortest track we were going to explore this week. We've already beaten that. Yesterday, we looked at a track from Nails that was only 90 seconds long. Today, we're going to look at something that's just 76 seconds long. That'll be the next track. Let's dive into this one, though. See what Pig Destroyer is bringing to the table with the track Hyperviolet. Dude, that cymbal work is clean. That core riff, though, is that double tapping or is that sweep picking? It's very clean, though. Oh! Hmm. Okay, so we've got two songs here, or two ideas, I should say. We have a more traditional song at the beginning, and then layered foghorns at the end. Let's explore them separately. Let's look at the start of the track. What kind of music is this? Yeah, listening to Nails yesterday kind of reminds me of grindcore. Actually, kind of reminds me of Nails. Quick moving riffs on the guitars. I feel like the bass work's a little more interesting on this one than Nails. Um, Forward moving, aggressive drum work, and screaming on top of all that, and a quick movement from section to section, from verses to choruses. But this one deviates quite a bit by going for a more technical approach to the composition itself. And I think that's what I find most interesting about this. First of all, we kick it off with a sick guitar riff, dude. It feels like a vertical infinity sign. And that's exactly what I drew out at the beginning, because that's what it, as soon as I heard that, I was like, all right, we rise up and we fall down. We rise up and we fall down. But it's interesting because the low end is more of a moment. You have an ascent, you have a descent, and then you have a thunk. And that is like the riff starting over. It's hitting its lowest point. Everything else is smooth, very fluid movement, and then the thunk, and then the fluid movement. It's very swirly though. I'm a big fan of swirly guitar riffs. I don't know what it is about them. I don't even know how to make them. Part of it, I think, is production, but I think there's also a smooth legato performance style that goes into it as well. Maybe there's harmonic qualities that feel more swirly than other chords or keys. I don't know. It's not often I hear it, but when I do, it's cool. I always love that sound. And this one just feels swirly. And of course, it's arpeggiating. You have the rising along the chord line and then the falling along the chord line. That thunk is a really interesting thing, though. It provides contrast. It isn't completely smooth. I did ask, though, if anyone has a keen enough ear to tell, is that sweep picking or is it double tapping? The massive range between the lowest and highest note tell me it's probably sweep. You start from the lowest string, move to a higher string, come back to the lowest string. But tapping also gives you access to all the strings, and tapping can sound incredibly smooth too. Given that there's so much production on this though, it's kind of tough to tell. If I could hear just the guitar itself, someone just playing it, even without seeing it, just let me hear the original playing of it, I think it'd be really easy to tell. But with all the distortion and compression and swirly effects on it, especially since the attack itself is getting lost a bit, which is adding to that legato feel. Not to say that the guitarist doesn't have the chops for that, but they probably are playing legato style, which is a softness of change between pitches. They're probably playing legato too, and then they're embellishing it by covering up some of the initial attack as well. So really elevating this feeling of smooth movement between notes. But as it stands, I can't tell. It's probably one of the two. I mean, it could be traditional picking too, not going for sweep. Maybe it's multiple notes on each string. Maybe just running up a string. It's not very efficient for the left hand, but you know, given the range, I think it's possible. It'd be tough. But yeah, just a solid riff right there. Greatly enjoyed that. But the other thing that's really technical on this is the drum work. And I love how the drums continue to expand. We have some really expressive, using the whole kit drum work at the beginning of the track. 30 seconds in or so, we start working with a lot of cymbal work, playing around with all of the cymbals. And I mean that, I didn't stutter, like all parts of all of the cymbals. You hear some stuff right at the edge of the cymbal moving inward, couple of bell hits, like it's just all parts of it, all the different textures that you can get out of it, and then using multiple cymbal types. There's lots of rolls going on in here. It is incredibly expressive. It is fun. It's bouncy. It's got this nice, light, bright, rhythmic device sitting above all of this noise, just kind of hovering up there, dancing. I don't know. I always love delicate cymbal work on top of heavy, aggressive music, and this absolutely scratches that itch. But just after this, we kind of move to a section of the drum work that still has cymbals, but they're no longer the focus. The focus seems to be the snare. It also isn't the only part of the kit, though. We also have the bass kick and toms being worked in here. So once again, a full drum kit experience, focusing primarily on these snare rolls, at least once a bar, as far as I could count it. And they just provide these little bursts of energy. And for the snare beads are relaxed. The term we use is that the snare is turned off. So we actually don't get the rattling of that. We just get the crack of the drum stick hitting the drum head without any of that iconic snare rumble and sizzle that comes after it. You know, this isn't a sound that a lot of people like. Some people just aren't a big fans of it. And I think it does need to be used in the right setting. I know nu metal, we saw a lot of bands with the snare turned off at the turn of the century, and nu metal got a bad rep for having that trash can snare sound. Yeah, this is what helped play into that. But here I think it works well. The production, the mix of it all works nicely, but also it creates a blunt sound. The snare usually, again, like I said, has a little sizzle to it, as there's a bunch of metal beads on the bottom of it that vibrate against a bottom drum head based on, you know, you hitting the drum and the vibrations moving down to it. We don't get that. It's very impactful, it's very physical, it's very now, not much afterwards. It ends up feeling a bit more aggressive, and I think that fits with this track. But interestingly, in opposition to the rest of the kit, the tom work and the cymbal work is all incredibly delicate and measured, where the snare comes in is very aggressive. Very, you know, stupid caveman, just beat it. Although we do get these nice rolls in there at this point too, adding a little bit more of a complexity to the more straightforward, just, you know, hitting the snare in the other places on emphasized beats. It provides more nuance to this one part of the kit that we didn't really see elsewhere in the drum work. All in all, it creates a rather varied and elevated drum part that is dynamic and exploratory and melodic in ways. You know, I'm going to be a sucker for this. I love the drummer. I love what they're doing here. And I hope when we go into the next track, we hear more of that. The bass, lots of bassy stuff, low end rumble, filling out the low ends, playing pedal tones. There were a couple of lines where I heard the bass moving, but for the most part, I'd say it's like 50-50 maybe, just getting more static ideas, more of the production sound of a wall of bass, more so than nuanced lines coming out of them. And the vocals, I don't know. I don't know why I keep drawing comparisons to Nails, other than the fact that both of these bands are playing very similar music. But I do feel like the vocals are similar to Nails. They're there, they're screaming at me. Maybe there's some rhythmic nuance I missed, but for the most part, they feel like the least complex part of this track. It is a rather aggressive sound overall, and the vocals certainly play into that. And then, like 90 seconds in, there's just these drones coming in from the bottom, rising up in volume, and then they're here. No other instruments present. I honestly don't know what these drones are. I kind of assumed synthesizers, but it's possible some guitars with a lot of the attack just removed. So you just play a little bit early so that by the time the sound comes in, it's ready to pick up where the last sound was, and you don't lose any of that long held out note. But could be synthesizer. You just hold the keys, hold them for as long as they need to be. And then drums. Lots of wild drum work here. Big drum fill for like a minute. Some parts of the drum fill I felt were more interesting. Others kind of locked into more of a complex metronome, not necessarily being just, hitting on the beat, a little bit more movement than that, but definitely not something I would call melodic drumming. And they kind of moved from a more melodic style into a more metronomic style. It was interesting at first. Then the drums became a bit standard, more static, and then there were no drums at all. Which makes me believe that despite this being a drum solo-led start to this section, the purpose of this moment is the synths. It's the atmosphere. It's the drones. These started out fine. We had one note, another note. That one felt kind of strange. Then a third note comes in and we're working with some really tense ideas right here. And then a higher pitched one comes in and it's kind of piercing. It's a very sharp tone. Then we get a low end rumble that creates more dissonance, more tension with the existing notes. Some of those have started to disappear while others fill in the space. And it's just this ever changing, well, like I mentioned, a layering of foghorns. These large tones, huge width, filling up so much space, but not really a focus on consonant harmony. Sometimes the harmony is consonant, the notes work well together, but usually by the time we've added our third, fourth, and fifth tones, consonance isn't really a thing anymore. I don't even know if any of these pitches are defined in the typical 12-tone intonation. Some of these intervals don't sound normal to me. Normal just because 99.9% of the music I listen to is 12 tones, so I'm used to the intervals that we can create with the 12 notes we have. But by no means is there a normal way to make music, just a more traditional way. But it's quite possible that maybe we're just playing with some minor microtonality. Not necessarily specifically aiming for specific pitches, but maybe using a pitch wheel or something on a keyboard to slightly alter a pitch. Not necessarily to a specific tone, but just to something a bit sharper or a bit flatter than what normally would be played at that pitch. Regardless, it feels odd. Alien in some ways harmonically, but overpowering completely from the production standpoint. I don't know what it's supposed to be because it just kind of peters out there at the ends. And it's interesting that so much energy and forward momentum at the beginning leads to this standstill in the final half. I certainly enjoyed the first more than the last, even though the first is not my cup of tea, but the end of this track, it's just drone. Drone and a cool drum part for a while, filled with tones that I did not enjoy. Less tones, but more note intervals I didn't enjoy. The chords in here can get rather rough, though there is that one high-pitched note that just, started to get a little painful there. Not a big fan of that one. I'm curious what the lyrics are going to say, though, because I have no idea what this track is trying to do, pairing the two sides that they did. I can see no narrative that would connect those two from a purely musical standpoint. So let's hit some lyrics. I wish there was more to the lyrics here. It leaves things a bit vague, but also incredibly drenched in figurative language. I feel like maybe there is enough information here if you can understand the connections between some of these ideas. There are 4 stanzas, though the second and the third are identical, which is interesting. I'm curious how that works in the music, how quickly we get from the second to the third, how much space is between rehearing these lines. It says, traced in wet sand, her name in perfect cursive, a love letter to the crescent moon. By tomorrow, it will be gone, I told her. So he wrote the moon's name, though the moon may be a metaphor for someone specific. He traced their name into the wet sand. I assume this is on a beach then, in water. The waves come up far enough to wet the sand, so of course the name will be erased soon. This next stanza, though, is the one that's repeated. There is no tomorrow, she said. I can feel her in a bikini of coiled snakes, dancing to the hiss of the wind, postcards from a paradise in flames. A bikini of coiled snakes is interesting. As far as I can tell, it means that he doesn't trust her anymore. I don't know what paradise in flames would be destruction of something good. Postcards would mean that she's there, but he's not. Or maybe vice versa. There's a separation of sense to this. Now again, this stanza gets repeated. I think it really wants to drive home the wedge between these two. And then it wraps up with, she used to be so right about everything. And I just have so many questions. I mean, I guess this does capture the end of a relationship, and maybe that's the most important part of it. There's a lot of creative ways to describe what's going on here. Even the love letter. Ooh, the love letter being gone tomorrow. Her saying there is no tomorrow. The love's already gone. This relationship's been over. Maybe that's what this is about. I don't know. Maybe I figured that out. It's talking through things sometimes helps. Because honestly, I had read this like 5 times. I had read it out loud prior to turning the camera back on. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But I think I got it. Now what that has to do with the music, I have no idea, dude. This music is aggressive in a way that the lyrics don't. There's a tenderness to the lyrics, a softness, even in the feeling of being betrayed, of looking at someone and not realizing who they are anymore. This could very easily be portrayed in a violent manner, something aggressive to match the music, and it isn't. Softly stated that she's a bikini of coiled snakes. Postcards from a paradise in flames. It is very soft language for the music that it resides within. And I think back to how it's delivered, the vocal style of this track. Maybe the contrast is the point. Maybe some of you enjoy that, to have such aggression paired with the softness of the lyrics to showcase the whirlwind of torment from within, despite more of a stoic nature outside. A recollection of fact, despite the fact that it's tearing you apart. But then there's the foghorns at the end, and dude, that goes right over my head. What is that even supposed to be signifying? I mean, it's a breaking down of things. By the end of it, it just kind of is, and then it peters out. Maybe that's the relationship, but why do we have a minute and a half of foghorn layering? What is that representing? Any song can wind down to nothing. Why that specifically? I'm kind of lost on that. Let's keep this train rolling though. Let's dive into this next one. This came off of the album that came out right after the one we checked out previously. This is Terrifier, Pretty In Casts. Let's kick it. the glass. Getting some groove in there. That's a song. Quite a bit distinct against the last track. Still has similar aggressive energy, sure, but a very different approach. I mean, everything that I enjoyed about the last track, particularly the drum work, isn't really present here. The drums are still more intricate and well produced, but the melodic qualities and exploratory rhythms are they're kind of not here. This track is more straightforward with its drum part. And of course, it could be an artistic reason. I mean, looking at the lyrics of the last one, there's a delicacy to them, and I completely forgot to bring this up. Maybe that's why, or maybe that's one of the elements where the lyrics pair up well with the instrumentation. Maybe the lyrics here are purely aggressive, and the drums need to match that energy. The guitar riffs are bonkers. This is just pure sonic violence. We have those panic chords going on here, but they're also bent, or maybe they're using the whammy bar, and we got that wow, wow, but with really tense dyads rather than just the monophonic tone I can make. And so you're getting the tension of the hyper dissonance, but also the bend. You're getting all the microtonal elements as we move from one set of pitches to another, while also creating this wow, that W sound, the wow part of it. It is harsh in its attack, it is harsh in its harmony, but it's soft in its sound. This isn't like a da 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 da, very harsh tone. This is a softness, a wow, smooth movement between pitches. It's interesting to pair all of this together, combining softer and harsher ideas across various styles and aspects of the sound. The rest of the guitar work, though, is just low-end, constant movement. It's sort of like the swirly thing where you just don't stop playing, but this one's more about stomping. A couple of low notes move between them. Bum, 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 bum. That's not exactly what was being played. It was quite a bit faster, but that's the general idea of it. Just pick a few notes, just kind of bounce between them, all within a lower range. And every once in a while, contrast that with this high pitch, wow, and then come back down to the stomping. It feels violent, especially on a first time listen. You can't be ready for any of this. I eventually found the patterns to the riffs, to the drum beats, the snare accents. It's not super complex. They are able to be picked up on a first time listen if you're familiar enough with rhythmic patterns in general, but also if you just have a keen ear. But the first time through these sections, I was honestly wondering how any of this made sense. Within the first 15 or 20 seconds, I was a bit lost on accents. I was a bit lost on any sort of deviation from the core riffage. I didn't understand when these parts came in, what kind of pattern I was looking for there. It feels like a whirlwind. Now, granted, even after understanding the accent patterns, the speed that we move through these ideas still makes it feel frantic. It is still whirlwind-like, but it's navigable in a way that wasn't at the beginning of the track. And being thrust into this didn't help either. From beat one, it is intense. You're getting screamed at, and then the drums and guitar come in, and it's a lot. And then the song's over. I honestly forgot that this was barely over a minute long. For some reason, I was thinking, 90 seconds. I don't know why I wasn't thinking 76. And while it's not a big difference, it's actually huge because this is just over a minute. At least at 90 seconds, you're at minute and a half. You're getting to the way of being a 2-minute song. This is just over one. And 1 minute of music is weird. It's too short to really do anything with. So I did kind of get caught off guard a little bit with the song just abruptly stopping. There's no indication it's going to end. It just does. And then you're just left with silence. And you're like, wow, it's been a whole minute. And I feel maybe there's some violence to that too. The abrupt ending with no signifier and being earlier than most people would even expect. Maybe if you listen to a lot of grindcore, you're used to this, but even me listening to pop music, this feels short. A lot of the music I listen to is still in the 2 to 3.5, 4 minute range. Just wild. Let me hit some lyrics on this one. All right. We got a pretty twisted track here. Talks about someone who hopes that someone else gets injured. Maybe she'll snap her wrist doing cartwheels or her ankle dancing drunk. Maybe she'll get in a car crash, twinkling bits of glass stuck in her. It says that she's so pretty in her casts, damaged so perfectly. Pretty twisted to start with, but somehow the final two lines, it made it even more depraved and bewildering. It says, I only get to hold her when she's injured. I only get to kiss her when she's sore. We have somebody hoping physical injury on another because it allows them to be physically close to them. Yeah, dude, that's a dark set of lyrics. It is interesting how much of it is physical, though. Never pretends that this is love of any sort. There's no care for this other person, just finds them physically and visually attractive. They're pretty in casts, and that they physically get to touch them, hold them, and kiss them when they're injured. There is no illusion here of what's going on. It seems the narrator is well aware of the twisted elements here, and they're fine with it. It also makes them seem a bit pathetic, though, and I'm not sure if that was intentional or not. But I also think it's an interesting mirror to hold up to parts of society. People who have to always be the savior. Maybe not necessarily people who put others in danger so that they can save them, but people who do feel that they are best utilized, or maybe have the best. It's hard to get into this headspace to figure out what the mentality of it would be. But I've seen this. It was a big thing in rom-coms for a long time, of like nerdy guys who would help neurodivergent women, or women who have been injured, and help them around, and then they fall in love because they helped them at their lowest, and now they're good. And it's just, I can see parts of that in here, and I wonder if this isn't supposed to be played completely straight, if it is supposed to be satire of sorts to showcase just how damaging this mentality is when you take it to an extreme. I don't know. It could go either way. I don't know what the lyricists ideas are. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Art allows us to explore the darker parts of humanity. That doesn't necessarily mean the people making the music are bad people themselves. So I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt and believe that this is satire of sorts to raise a mirror up to this activity. But you never know. And the fact that it doesn't openly condemn it or condone it, people can read this as inviting. They can see themselves in it and, have the same thoughts and feel validated of sorts. That opens up an entire other can of worms about what roles art has and what responsibility it has. That's a completely different discussion that I don't even think I have the tools to speak about properly. But it is just as gnarly lyrically as it is musically. These are my thoughts then on what are these? Pretty in Casts, and what was the other one? They're by Pig Destroyer. Hyperviolent. Oh, that's interesting. Pretty in Casts does make sense. I mean, it even comes up in the lyrics. But Hyperviolent, that song wasn't about violence at all. Anyone have any thoughts on that? If you do, let me know. If you enjoyed this, if there's anything you'd like to add, if you have your own perspective on the lyrics or the meanings of this or the title of Hyperviolent for a song about a falling out, let me know. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.